This video is brought to you by Fulfillrite. If there is one business innovation that's likely to stick around for years, it's crowdfunding. No longer must you seek funding from your own pockets, your family, the bank, or an angel investor. Crowdfunding means you can get a lot of people to invest in your idea, often in small donations. The impacts have been diverse and massive. One Kickstarter campaign raised over $20 million US, and Kickstarter alone as a crowdfunding platform has helped business owners raise close to $5 billion total. It's even changing our politics too, as many as half of the donations in the 2020 Democratic primary season came from donations of $200 or less. So long story short, crowdfunding isn't going anywhere. People are now not asking the question of whether crowdfunding is viable, but rather which crowdfunding platform is best suited for their needs. That's why in this video, we're going to talk about how to choose a crowdfunding platform that works best for you. But before we get to that, a quick note. If you need help fulfilling your crowdfunding campaign, look no further. We've worked with hundreds of crowdfunding creators and we would be happy to help you too. Go to fulfillrite.com/open to request a quote today. Link in the description. Alright, back to the show. A lot of people think crowdfunding just means Kickstarter, but that's not true. Crowdfunding occurs anytime a bunch of different people invest in your ideas, particularly in small donations. There are a lot more crowdfunding platforms than you'd expect. I found an article that alone lists 20 of them. Now, even though there are a ton of crowdfunding platforms out there in the world, 5 stand head and shoulders above the rest. They are all, in their own ways, household names. They are Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Patreon, GoFundMe, and Gamefound. Now, each crowdfunding platform has its own pros and cons. No one platform is objectively better or worse than the other. They merely fit different niches, and you have to make a conscious choice to pick the crowdfunding platform which is right for your business. Now, Kickstarter is the biggest crowdfunding platform. In their own words, Kickstarter helps artists, musicians, filmmakers, designers, and other creators find the resources and support they need to make their ideas a reality. To date, tens of thousands of creative projects, big and small, have come to life with the support of the Kickstarter community. Since their debut in 2009, there have been 173,000 successfully funded Kickstarter campaigns that have collectively raised over $4.6 billion. So as you can imagine, a platform this successful has a lot of upsides. The community is huge, project quality is generally high, and their all-or-nothing funding model keeps you from having to deliver a full project with only part of the needed capital. Of course, it's not all sunshine with Kickstarter though. There are some definite downsides to using their platform. Their fees can take up to 10% of your funding, and what's more, all campaigns must be approved prior to launch. You can't launch a Kickstarter from every country, and there are stricter limitations on what kind of projects you can and cannot launch. For example, you cannot raise money for charity, humanitarian efforts, or basically anything that's not a creative product or service. And one more thing, the all-or-nothing funding method is a double-edged sword. You will never be at risk of raising less than your goal on Kickstarter, but you will always be at risk of raising nothing at all. If Kickstarter is a gated community, then Indiegogo is the Wild West. Imagine a popular crowdfunding website where you can raise funding for nearly anything from nearly any country. You don't have to have your campaigns approved, and the fees are even lower, usually 4 to 9%. Indiegogo also provides flexible funding. Essentially, if you don't meet your goal, you can choose whether or not to keep the partially raised funds. Kickstarter offers no such option. Of course, there is one major downside to Indiegogo. Quite simply, it's not Kickstarter. It doesn't have the same massive community, and that makes it a somewhat less effective way to build an audience. Depending on your goals though, the trade-off might be worth it. Now, if you watch YouTubers or follow bloggers and social media influencers, you've likely heard of Patreon. It's a crowdfunding platform that allows creatives to monetize their work when their creative media doesn't lend itself readily to monetization. Patreon allows creators to create subscription services with different tiers for different levels. Patreon supporters receive different perks based on their chosen tier. This is good for community building as well as consistent revenue. Unfortunately, Patreon comes with some baggage. For one, if you use a creative platform such as YouTube to post your work and a crowdfunding platform such as Patreon, you're putting your business in the hands of those two companies. Using Patreon requires commitment, which makes things like fee changes really hurt. And similarly, if YouTube changes their algorithm, you risk losing a valuable source of leads for your Patreon. Lastly, Patreon bills supporters for monthly subscription fees regardless of whether or not you've delivered. If you're not ready for that, it can lead to some very awkward conversations with your supporters. Now, we said Indiegogo was the Wild West of crowdfunding. That analogy falls apart when you're talking about GoFundMe, which is truly the Wild West of crowdfunding platforms. There are basically no restrictions on GoFundMe. You can raise money for charity, business, life events, accidents, and illnesses. Insurance won't cover your operations? Start a GoFundMe. Need to raise $1 million for disaster relief after a hurricane? GoFundMe. Want someone on the internet to give you $100 for no real reason? GoFundMe. The upsides are obvious. You're guaranteed to walk away with the funds you raise. Donations are quick and simple. There are are no fees, deadlines, or goals. And once more, there are virtually no restrictions. However, GoFundMe can be problematic for business purposes for a few reasons. First of all, there are limits to where you can launch a GoFundMe campaign from. It's not an international platform. It's not open to that many countries. What's more, there are no backer incentives in the same way there are for Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Patreon. People give what they give and they don't get anything in return. Lastly, there is one remaining problem with GoFundMe. It's got a weird reputation. Now, weird GoFundMe pages circulate online with a frequency that rivals Florida Man headlines. There are perfectly legitimate reasons to use GoFundMe as your chosen crowdfunding platform, and the vast majority of projects there are legit. Just don't be surprised if you have to clarify some misconceptions along the way. That brings us to Gamefound. Now, Gamefound is a platform that specializes in crowdfunding board games. Kickstarter has been the go-to place for board games, and it still arguably is, at least for now. Is something wrong with Kickstarter for board games? Not really. Gamefound just found a slightly different angle. Their entire platform is based off crowdfunding for board games. It's nothing but board games. And this might sound like a strangely limited niche, but it makes sense. Historically, board games have performed well on Kickstarter. In 2018, board games were estimated to have raised $564 million for the website as a whole. What separates Gamefound from Kickstarter is what they offer. Gamefound has worked to improve features of the campaign process such as communication, stretch goals, pledges, as well as add-ons. In the words of Tabletop Gaming UK, they're aware of what areas of crowdfunding are sticking points and they've worked to change those. For example, adding additional options like upgrade tokens or add-ons can now be completed within the pledge rather than after the campaign ends. Plus, stretch goals now automatically unlock, comments can be sorted by topic or hashtag so you can see any similar concerns or shoutouts, and a bit more clarity in your pledges as to what you've picked, what you're gaining in a stretch goal, and easily transition into the pledge manager afterwards if needed. In summary, the Gamefound platform directly benefits tabletop board game crowdfunders by providing a site with their target audience in mind. Gamefound provides a site that gamers can use to find new games and that creators can use to pitch new games. Now, the cons are fairly obvious. Gamefound isn't very well established, and it's for board games only, so if you're raising money for anything other than a board game, or if you're simply looking for an established platform, Kickstarter is still the way to go. Crowdfunding is here to stay. It's a revolutionary business model that allows creative and unique projects to flourish. We love seeing that, particularly as our client base tends to be full of creative and fascinating individuals and companies. That said, picking the right platform for your business needs is critical. Kickstarter is fantastic for creative projects, Gamefound is starting to pick up some steam with board game projects in particular, Indiegogo is a good alternative when Kickstarter's restrictions are too burdensome. If you're looking for steady revenue, Patreon is a great option to consider, and if all else fails, there's always GoFundMe, where opportunities abound in the absence of restrictions. If you've watched this video and you feel like you might need help fulfilling your crowdfunding campaign, we'd like to help. Fulfillrite is the most trusted name in order fulfillment. Boost customer satisfaction and scale your business faster with a logistics partner that feels like an extension of your team. Services include same-day shipping, real-time order and inventory tracking, dedicated customer service, and volume-based discounts. Go to fulfillrite.com/open to request a quote today, link in the description. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the bell too so you can see videos as soon as they drop. And now a couple of parting questions. Have you ever run a crowdfunding campaign? And if so, which platform did you use and how'd it go? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.